Hello and welcome to the Heaven Bound Sunday School class at the First General Baptist Church in Truman. Going to read a bit of scripture from the book of Matthew, be chapter 15, and we'll begin in verse 21. Now, Matthew, he was a tax collector, later became a disciple of Jesus. And as a tax collector, Matthew worked with the foreign occupiers of Palestine, the Romans. And during the first century AD, tax collectors, also known as publicans, they were despised by their fellow countrymen. They were seen as traitors to the Jewish people because they assisted the Romans in taking in tax money. They were also held in low regard because they frequently enriched themselves at the expense of others. Now we'll read that scripture. Beginning in verse 21, it says, Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coasts of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coasts and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word, and his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent, but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, Lord, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Now Jesus had traveled to the coast of Tyre and Sidon. They were prominent cities of that time in an area north of Galilee, that area now known as Lebanon. He went there possibly for solitude, wanted to get to a quiet spot, be by himself, and pray to the Father. That was difficult to do as Jesus' notoriety spread around the area as people heard him preach and teach, and some of the miracles he performed, and word of mouth, word traveled around, and people wanted to hear Jesus, and some wanted to just see who this man was, and some wanted maybe a miracle to be performed in their lives. And so it was difficult for him to find that solitude, but that was potentially what he was trying to do as he went there. But once he got there, scripture tells us a woman from Canaan cried out to Jesus, trying to get his attention, hollering at him and screaming. And now, Mark identifies the woman of Canaan as a Syro-Phoenician woman. Now, each designation is correct, with both defining the woman as Gentile. Matthew describes her as ethnically from Canaan, while Mark describes her as a resident of the region. Now, of greater importance than her ethnic identity or geographic residence is her awareness of who Jesus is and what he can do. She calls him the Son of David, indicating her belief in Jesus' identity and mission. And she specifically asks Jesus for mercy. She tells Jesus that her daughter is possessed by a devil. The scripture actually says vexed by a devil. And she wants Jesus to help her. And she asked Jesus for mercy. Now Matthew, in his book, doesn't describe any of the symptoms of the daughter's distress, and many people possessed with the devil had different symptoms. But she was asking mercy for herself. She was her daughter's caretaker, and she wanted the devil to be cast away from her daughter. Now, Jesus doesn't answer the woman, and his refusal to answer the woman might seem cruel, but his silence reflects some cultural differences of that day. At that time, it would be considered inappropriate for a Jewish rabbi to answer a woman, and a Gentile woman no less. His silence could also be considered a test of the strength and quality of the woman's faith. Jewish teachers and rabbis sometimes tested their students, and Jesus was no exception. And there are examples there in the New Testament. Now, the people that do want something done are the disciples. They want Jesus to do something. And basically, they want her sent away. They're tired of hearing her hollering and calling out for mercy. As many of us do today, we dismiss people that we consider bothersome or distracting. We just don't want to be bothered with them. And that's what the disciples were all about. They didn't really seem to care about the woman's problems. They just wanted her to quit hollering. They wanted Jesus to do something. Now, Jesus finally did speak, and his response seems to be directed toward the disciples. He answers the request by denying it. He indicates his primary mission is to the lost sheep of Israel. Jesus had earlier sent his emissaries to the lost sheep of Israel with specific instructions to focus there rather than the broader population. Now, why were such restrictions necessary? Only when a base of operations is established can the message be broadcast more fully. By focusing on the lost sheep of Israel, Jesus invokes a strategy that will soon send the gospel throughout the Roman world using the platform provided by Jewish synagogues. The strategy is seen in the book of Acts. Now, the woman was persistent. She didn't argue with Jesus about his mission. She worshiped him. That's what the scripture tells us. And she said, "Lord, help me." She was a desperate mother with a possessed child. She sought relief from the person who could deliver it. And she recognized Jesus as being that person. Now, Jesus' response tempers his refusal. Household pets must be fed, but household members must be fed first. He stretches the woman's faith by his initial refusal. Will she surrender in despair or persevere as long as necessary? Undaunted by Jesus' refusal, this unnamed woman shows amazing logic and insight. Household pets gather up dropped crumbs. The implication is enormous. The message must first come to the Jews, but leftover blessings must also come to non-Jews who seek them. Verse 28, Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Persistence wins the day. Her repeated requests, worshipful approach, and honest dialogue demonstrated her faith. Jesus described it as a great faith. He had tested her faith throughout the conversation. There was no longer any reason to continue the test, and Jesus granted her request. The afflicted daughter was made whole. One measure of faith is asking for help. A deeper measure of faith is to keep on asking for help until it arrives.